The Washington Nationals have the most high-ceiling, low-floor outfield prospects in the entire minor leagues. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster, and thank you for making this your first listen every single day. We're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So, kicking off the National League East farm system previews, we have the Washington Nationals, 71-91 last year. So, not a great year. You knew it wasn't going to be a great year. But things could change rapidly because this system, perhaps more so than any other farm system in baseball, has a bunch of outfielders with very high ceilings and, for most of them, very low floors. And looking at the rundown here, I've got 6 different outfielders that we've got to talk about at some point in time in this show, but we're not going to get to everybody important or everybody worth discussing in this system. If there's somebody that I missed that you want to hear about, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. All of the rest of the ways to submit a question for Monday's mailbag. Discord, email, whatever it might be, it's in the episode description, it's in the show notes. I have a Linktree link down there with everything in it. Okay, one of the high ceiling outfielders that has a high floor, probably really the only one, outfielder Dylan Cruz, the number 2 overall pick out of LSU last year, got in 35 games and made it all the way to Double-A. 292, 377, 467 is the slash line for Dylan Cruz. 5 home runs, 14 extra base hits, 14 walks to 38 strikeouts, and 4 of 10 on stolen bases. He played mostly center field last year. 27 games in center, 4 in right, 2 in left. And he's one of those guys, there's a lot of guys like this in this system. The speed is, I think, probably plus. The arm is plus. And it feels like the defense in center field is probably above average. And so if you got some sort of amazing defender, it's really easy to see a lot of these guys kicking out to a corner spot, and Cruz is one of those that could go to right. But he can stick in center field and he'll be above average defender. He's not going to be a Gold Glove contender because there's just amazing defenders in MLB, but he's good enough. The big thing about when you watch what he did, obviously his college year was dumb. It was like the slash line was 426, 567, 713. 20% walk rate, 13% strikeout rate, just nuts. 18 homers, all that kind of stuff, obviously, crazy. But when you watch what he did in the minors last year, it's something where a lot of the under the hood numbers are really good. And so when you see individual slash lines, and I think one of the talking points behind Dylan Cruz was how poorly he played in Double-A when he got there, which you have to remember, one, it was 20 games. He batted 208, 318, 278. He batted 20 games, or he played in only 20 games, so it's a small sample. It's 85 plate appearances. And then also, none of these Nationals organization parks are really good to hit home runs in. So, yes, the swing and miss ticked up a little bit, but I'm not concerned about a 20-game sample in Double-A Harrisburg because, again, the stuff under the hood was very good. He had a zone contact rate of 85%. His average exit velocity was like 95 miles an hour. His chase rate was like 15%. His 90th percentile exit velocity was 110. And you see a little bit of that tick down when you get into professional baseball and you switch from a metal bat to a wood bat. But everything is still really good. The zone contact's really good. He's disciplined and chase and all of that. The power is still plus power, even after you go from metal to wood. And so Dylan Cruz, I would imagine you probably start him back in Double-A to open 24, depending on how spring training goes. He might start in Triple-A. And I could see, I think since you're not contending in Washington this year, I can see the best case or the ideal scenario being something where Dylan Cruz debuts late in the season. You give him enough time to get his feet wet, see what he needs to work on, but preserve rookie eligibility because he is the type of talent that can contend for Rookie of the Year in 2025. He's that good. And then also, you have a ton of outfielders, and there's just no clue which ones are going to be ready. So get him up and get him through so you can clear out space underneath him for some of those other outfielders. One of those guys you're clearing space for, outfielder James Wood, second rounder in 2021, and was part of the return for Juan Soto when he was traded to the Padres. 129 games last year between High A and Double A. 262, 353, 520. 26 home runs, 62 extra base hits, 65 walks to 173 strikeouts for James Wood. 18 to 21 on stolen bases. Wild stats. We got to talk. Okay, so one, the power is absurd. 90th percentile exit velocity of 109. And he's surprisingly disciplined when it comes to chase. It's like 26%, which is below average, right? League average is around like 32 or so. But the strikeout rate is 31%, and it's because his contact rate is only 68%. And specifically, when you watch what James Wood struggles with, it is sliders and it is changeups. He doesn't really chase sliders that much. He's still, even that, he's just around 30%. So he's still league average when it comes to chasing sliders. But even when they're in the zone, he's not really hitting them. Now, changeups, he chases a ton, he swings it a ton, and his contact rate's 50% on changeups. So you've got work to do. Again, he's good with fastballs. You've got work on some of that other stuff. But the power, like we said, is absurd. 26 homers and a .520 slugging percentage, despite striking out 1/3 of the time, right? So you can see how the ceiling is incredibly high for James Wood, but the floor isn't nearly as high as the ceiling because that strikeout rate was 31%, again, combined between High A and Double A. And yes, he's 21, but still, that's a very high strikeout rate for a top prospect to have. Now, defensively, another guy. He's massive, 6'7", and he's above average speed-wise, but it's more so from the long strides. He is a good athlete, but it's more so the long strides, right? So I'd give him above average speed. The arm's above average. I think he's one of the ones who's more likely to get moved into a corner versus a guy like a Dylan Cruz who can realistically expect to stick in center field. So in your ideal outfield alignment, you have Dylan Cruz in center. You have James Wood with an above average arm in either right or left. I think his arm's good enough for right, but you do have guys behind him with bigger arms that you may end up kicking James Wood out to left. But either way, really high ceiling. You can see where the floor is a little bit lower. The third guy, really a fan here of Brady House. 2021 first rounder out of high school. 88 games last year between single A, high A, and double A. 312, 365, 497. 12 homers, 36 extra base hits, 26 walks to 89 strikeouts, 9 of 11 on stolen bases. Power production isn't great. Some of that is the park factors at all of these ballparks. High A Wilmington's like a 70 park factor where 100 is neutral, so it's 30% harder to hit home runs. Fredericksburg is like 89%, so it's also harder to hit home runs. But some of it is also his launch angle. He hits a lot of ground balls, and there's some things to work on there. The power is good, 107 mile an hour for your 90th percentile exit velo, but he's only really necessarily average when it comes to zone contact and overall contact. It's 70% 70% overall contact, and then chase is right around average, maybe a little bit higher at like 35%. So you have a package here of a guy that has good power, has, I'd say, average contact ability, can crush a lefty. He has like a 631 slugging last year against lefties, can crush lefties. And so his power is ultimately held back because the hit tool is not better. It's not a bad hit tool, but it's not better. And when he does make that contact, too often the ball is on the ground and not elevated where that power can come into play. Now, defensively, I'm glad they said, hey, you're a full-time third baseman now. The arm is, I've seen it called above average to plus. I've got it plus or better. It feels like it's a cannon when he really gets behind one and unleashes it. And the defense is pretty good. I think the real issue he had at short was the range. But the actual defensive actions are good. And again, the arm is really good. So Brady House, probably AA to AAA. And again, in a best case scenario, you're getting him up at the end of the year. I'm not sure if that happens or not. He had some injury issues in 22. And so maybe you slow played a bit and he's a 25 guy. But either way, I could absolutely see where towards the end of the season, we get him some time, and then he's a full-time guy in 25. We'll see what happens for Brady House. In just a minute, quite a few players you might see in 2024. Some of them project to be pretty good. Some of them might just be okay. But either way, they'll contribute, and we'll talk about them next, right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our new sponsor, Factor Meals. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. You can skip the grocery stores, skip the prep work, skip the cooking fatigue. You just get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. They have over 35 meals to choose from per week. They can handle stuff like keto or calorie smart or vegan or veggie or whatever. And over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolution. These things are 2-minute meals that are restaurant quality. You can prep them super quickly, and they have tons of snack options. Breakfast foods, smoothies, juices, snacks, all kinds of stuff like that. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and use code LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off your first order. That's code LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 to get 50% off with Factor today. Okay, players you might see in 2024. There's a couple position players outside of the Dylan Cruz and James Wood and Brady House we already talked about. And then a couple arms. So position players, I don't think any of them supplant any of your starters, but they can rotate into the mix. Nassim Nunez, 2019 second rounder by the Marlins out of high school and was taken in the Rule 5 draft by the Nationals. And a guy that the numbers weren't necessarily great in AA, but he has some legit tools he can bring you. So 125 games last year in AA. 225, 341, 286. The slugging was a 286, yes. 5 homers, 18 extra base hits, 87 walks to 107 strikeouts, 52 of 59 on stolen bases. I'm honestly confused by the power, by the profile of Nassim Nunez. It's the power is something like a 20 or 30 grade power. There's just not power there. He had a 78% contact rate in AA, yet somehow only batted 225. It feels like the batting average should be higher than 225 when you make contact almost 80% of the time, period. And you have a 70 grade on your speed, and you can beat out a lot of balls in the infield. Just really a weird profile there. But the defense, really good. The arm, really good. And there is a role to use Nassim Nunez as a bench piece, who is a higher on base guy, who is a stolen base threat, and a very good defender behind some of your guys like a shortstop CJ Abrams, behind your second baseman, behind your third baseman. Get you pinch runner for you. Lots of places he can help. Obviously, he has to make contact at the major league level. He has to be able to hit. He is a Rule 5 pick. If you try to get rid of him, you may lose him to go back to Miami. We'll see what happens there. Another low-power infielder, second baseman Darren Baker, 2021, I think it's a 16th rounder out of Cal Berkeley. This is the son of manager Dusty Baker. 107 games last year between rookie ball, A ball, and AAA. He rehabbed an injury there. So 284, 350, 349. Another guy whose slugging is lower than his on base. 3 homers, 18 extra base hits, 43 walks to 79 strikeouts, and 21 of 27 on stolen bases. The difference between Darren Baker and Nassim Nunez is Baker isn't as good defensively, so all of those defensive tools are just lower than Nassim Nunez's. The arm is probably a 40 or 45 grade. The speed is maybe above average, and so the overall defense ends up coming out to, I'd say, probably fringe or so. He's mostly played second base, 68 games there, but he played 33 games in left last year. They added that to his repertoire, and 1 game in center, and then 3 as a DH. Zone contact, 90%. If it's in the strike zone, he can hit it. It's not going to go very far, right? The power is not there as well. So another guy that can play your bench, can cover multiple positions if somebody's injured, can be a backup stolen base threat, and is a really good clubhouse guy, but isn't going to be an impact performer at the major league level. He does raise the floor of your roster, though, even if he's not good enough to make it to your everyday starting lineup. Couple pitchers here. First one, Cade Cavalli, first rounder in 2020 out of Oklahoma. He had Tommy John last March with Dr. Keith Meister, the surgeon for the Rangers. He's the new hot guy to go to for Tommy John ever since James Andrews has retired. And last year, 20 games in AAA, 6-4 with a 3.71 ERA, just under 100 innings, 9.6 strikeouts per 9, 3.6 walks per 9, only 3 home runs, and almost 100 innings. It's an upper 90s fastball, a vertical breaking curveball. He's got a slider and a change. He's got all of the tools you want, all of the directions, 3 different velocity bands. The thing here is it's health, right? The goal is to get him, have him available sometime over the summer. He was throwing at the end of last season, playing catch and things like that. He's not supposed to have any non-expected restrictions going into spring training. So it's just going to be, at what point are you comfortable with how he's returned from Tommy John to actually put him into major league games? But either way, he'll be back sometime over the summer this year. And then 2 pitchers, one of them you did see last year for, I think, just a couple outings, like 20 innings, in Jackson Rutledge. And the other one was traded when you traded away Heimer Candelario to the Cubs in lefty DJ Herz. So Rutledge, first rounder in 2019, 23 games last year between AA and AAA, 8-4, 3.71 ERA, just under 120 innings, 106 strikeouts, so 8 per 9, to 55 walks, which is 4 per 9, and 12 home runs allowed. Throws a fastball that's low to mid-90s. He has both a 2-seamer and a 4-seamer. It plays up because he gets a ton of extension on it, and the 4-seamer's got good induced vertical break numbers up in the zone, so good shape to it. Has a low 80s slider and a high 80s changeup with it. Now, he threw more strikes at the major league level than he threw in AAA, and everybody who's written about him has gone and asked, is this because of the automated balls and strikes? And I think it was. 56.5% strikes in AAA. 62% at the major league level. So you can see there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. And I think it's because of what ABS did to elevated fastballs. Not 100% sure if that's what it was, but that feels like what it was. I think the consensus here in the prospect apparatus is right on Jackson Rutledge. We'll see what he does. I would imagine if he doesn't completely fall on his face in spring training, he's probably with the major league team to break 24. We'll see what happens there. For DJ Herz, ERA just under 3.5 and 22 starts in AA last year. 94 1/3 innings, 135 strikeouts to 57 walks. A little bit of not great control here. Fastball sits in the low 90s, really good extension on it, really good shape to it as well, like Rutledge's fastball. The changeup, probably a 70 grade. Really good fade on it. And he has, I don't know if he has one breaking ball or 2. Because if you watch sometimes, he has what looks like a vertical breaking curveball. If you watch sometimes, it's almost like a sweepy slider. I don't know if it's one pitch that he varies the shape of, or if it's 2 distinct pitches. I've seen some write-ups that talk about one, some talk about the other, live looks where they say I've seen both. I'm not 100% sure what those breaking pitches are for DJ Herz, but either way, it's going to be intriguing to see, one, is there any more velocity in that package? And then two, what does he do in AAA, and at what point do they feel comfortable using him at the major league level? So we'll see what happens there. In just a minute, again, lower level prospects to watch. We've got 4 or 5 outfielders to talk about, as well as a couple arms and a third baseman. We'll do all that next, right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl Eve to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about getting the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, placing some super bets. And the great thing is, FanDuel has tons of different prop bets to end your season with a W or 2 or 3. You can obviously pick the winner of Super Bowl 58, but they've got which players will score a touchdown, who will score a touchdown first, how many points will be scored, all kind of stuff like that. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to be signed up for the Super Bowl with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Final segment here on Locked On MLB Prospects, looking at the Washington Nationals farm system. And again, reminder, we're not going to get to everybody interesting in here. If there's somebody you want to hear about, let me know. We'll throw it in the Monday mailbag. Third baseman Yoandy Morales, second rounder last year out of Miami, 42 games, made it all the way to Double-A last year. 349, 423, 494. Slugging of almost 500. He didn't hit any home runs. No home runs, but 20 extra base hits in 42 games. 19 walks to 36 strikeouts. 1 for 2 on stolen bases. Really weird that the exit velocities were good. The contact rate was good. And he had almost 200 plate appearances and didn't hit a home run. But again, Wilmington, 70 park factor, so 30% harder to hit home runs there. Fredericksburg's an 89, so it's 11% harder. It's probably a combination of some bad luck and those park factors, why he didn't get at least one home run. But either way, the exit velocity when he swapped from metal to wood went from an average of 94 to an average of 91, still good. 90th percentile had been 109 in college, so there's plenty of power there. And if you still look at the frame, it makes sense. 6'4", 250. He spent most of his time at third base. He got 3 starts at first, 68, the rest were at third. So you have a guy, good contact ability, 75% in that small sample, good power, but some size concerns, some defensive concerns. If he can stick at third base, it gives you flexibility. Brady House is above him in the minors, though. So between that and some of the defensive issues and the size, you may see him switch to first base. And if that happens, it actually probably works out better for you because now you have a third baseman, a first baseman, you've installed your shortstop already in CJ Abrams, and you have a ton of outfield options. Some of those guys, real quick, Dalen Lyle, Robert Hassell, Elijah Green, Cristhian Vaquero. Okay, so Lyle, second rounder out of high school in 2021, missed almost the entire year in 22 because of Tommy John, but got 106 games between single A and high A. So that's why he was still in the low minors last year, because he missed all of 22 with Tommy John. 269, 355, 452. 9 home runs, 46 extra base hits, 52 walks to 99 strikeouts, and 23 of 29 on stolen bases. He's in that weird place where the contact wasn't amazing enough to say it's a plus hit tool. It was like 77% contact, but the power wasn't good enough to solidly say, yes, he can hang out in the corner outfield. He fits that profile and do what he needs to do. The arm is fringy. He's a plus runner, but the arm is fringy. And I've got some defensive questions. So most of what he did last year, 59 games in left, 31 in center, 8 in right, 8 DH. He needs to get better defensively so that he can stick in center, or he needs to hit for more power. You've got 2 options there. Let's figure out which one he can do, because right now he's in that weird middle ground of defensively not good enough for center, but power-wise, not good enough for a corner. Little work to do on Dalen Lyle. I'm expecting high A to double A in 24. We'll see what happens. Robert Hassell, one of the guys who came over in the Juan Soto trade, first rounder in 2020 out of high school. 121 games, mostly in double A last year. 221, 324, 321. 9 homers, 27 extra base hits. 68 walks to 161 strikeouts. And 15 to 20 on stolen bases. The power numbers were okay for Robert Hassell. 90th average exit, a 90 mile an hour average exit velocity. And a 102.2 90th percentile. But the contact was like 72%, which is at best average. It backed up a little bit when he got to double A. And when you watched him, he was noticeably thinner last year than he was in years past. I don't know if it was a deliberate trying to work on conditioning to preserve some speed and get better defensively, or if it was inadvertent weight loss. And again, the power didn't really do anything special. The contact backed up a bit, and it's going to be a big 24 for Robert Hassell. All of his stuff, another one of those guys where the speed's above average, the arm's above average, the defense is above average. He can stick in center, he can play all three, and he's probably going to get kicked out of center by a better defender. Again, a situation where hopefully he can find some more power so he profiles better in a corner. Elijah Green, first rounder in 2022 out of high school. Struggle bus last year. 75 games in A-ball. 210, 323, 306. 4 homers and 18 extra base hits. 45 walks to 139 strikeouts. Again, in 330 plate appearances. 30 of 35 on stolen bases. Massive power. 110 mile an hour, 90th percentile exit velocity, right? The speed's absurd too. 70 speed. But your power tool is only as good as your hit tool. It all plays down because he had a 56% contact rate last year. And in the zone, it only improves to 62%. So obviously some issues there. You see how the ceiling could be incredibly high, right? He's hitting 110 mile an hour on the 90th percentile exit velo. But you see how the floor is incredibly low because it's literally 56% swing percentage or contact percentage on his swings. So arm is plus, defense is above average, speed is really good, but again, he's got to make more contact. We'll see what happens this year. I'm assuming either single A or high A for 24 for Elijah Green. Cristhian Vaquero, the IFA, the star of that last IFA class in 22, 58 games between rookie ball and A ball. 252, 383, 359. Another guy where the power's below the on base. 2 homers, 15 extra base hits, 41 walks to 53 strikeouts, 22 with 30 on stolen bases. Speed's a 70 grade. Arm is a 60 grade. Defense is somewhere between 55 and a 60. He played all 3 positions, but mostly center. Patience is really good. You're just waiting on the power to come in with Cristhian Vaquero to figure out what's going to happen. I think he has the best shot of sticking in center. Obviously, has the longest way to go to make the majors. Couple pitchers real quick. Right-hand pitcher Jarlin Susana, another piece of that Juan Soto trade. And right-hand pitcher Travis Sikora, guys I'm going to be watching a lot in the lower minors this year. Susana, fastballs in the high 90s, sliders in the high 80s, changeups in the high 80s, and a vertical breaking curveball that he rarely uses because it's not very good. Threw under 60% strikes. There's been a lot of conversation about make him a closer. He'd be a great closer. Obviously, the starter is more valuable, but you've got to dial in the control and the ability to hit the zone before you can count on him to be a starter, but you've got plenty of time. Sikora, high velocity fastball as a prep draftee, a slider, and a splitter. This is the year of the splitter. Excited to see his splitter in professional baseball. He didn't pitch after the draft last year, so watch for him. Our dart throw here, guy I'm really excited to watch. Outfielder Andrew Pinckney, 2023 4th rounder out of the University of Alabama, 41 games and went all the way to double A. 321, 415, 457. 4 homers, 13 extra base hits. 19 walks to 38 strikeouts, 11 of 14 on stolen bases. Played mostly right field. Speed's plus, arm is plus, but there were other guys there. And the defense is probably average to above average, so they put him in right field. 90th percentile exit velo of 107, contact of only 69%. Really a weird profile. In the zone, it was like 84%. And the chase isn't that bad. It's a 24% chase. High zone contact, good chase, but low overall contact. It's because when he chases, he almost always misses. Super tough dude to play against. SEC opposing baseball players loved him as a person, hated him as a competitor because he's so good. But you've got to figure out just either making more contact when you go for a pitch that's borderline or not swinging. We'll figure out what happens there. And either way, really intriguing outfielder in a system full of intriguing outfielders. Doing the rest of the National League East this week. Again, there's a guy you missed. Let me know. We'll put him in the Monday mailbag. Until next time, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.